That's right. There have been lots of claims and counterclaims here, so we've got to be a bit careful. It is obviously a very difficult situation to know exactly what's going on, as you say, and we're basing this on reports from Syrian state TV, which, as you can imagine, reflects and reports the views of the Syrian government. But they have broadcast pictures which they say, you can see these pictures here, show busloads of Syrian rebels from the faction Jeish al-Islam, who they say has agreed to a deal to evacuate out of the enclave of Eastern Ghouta, where they'd been holed up for several years. Basically, the regime for the past 6 weeks or so has been launching a fierce offensive on Eastern Ghouta to try and retake control of it. And they'd retaken around 95% of it. The last remaining rebels there from various factions, but the largest one by far was Jeish al-Islam, have been holed up in and around the town of Douma. Well, the Russians have been negotiating between the Syrian government and the rebel factions to try and get the fighters to lay down their heavy weapons and be bussed out of Eastern Ghouta and taken to rebel enclaves up in the north of Syria, near the border with Turkey. Now, there have been denials from some members of the rebel faction Jeish al-Islam. They've been saying no, that they're staying put, they're not going to agree to this deal. But what we think is going on here is that the leadership of this rebel faction, Jeish al-Islam, is deeply divided over whether or not to accept the Russian brokered deal. And this is backed up by the monitoring group, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, who are based in Britain, but base their verifications on observers on the ground. They say that a few coachloads of rebels and their families have been taken out of Eastern Ghouta, but others remain. So we'll have to wait and see how this plays out in recent days. But it certainly seems there has been some movement there to get this last remaining rebel faction out of Eastern Ghouta.
Indeed, and as you're saying there, it really sounds like just a pocket of resistance, if anything, left in Eastern Ghouta at the moment. How big a win is that for Bashar al-Assad?
Well, this would be a major victory for the Syrian president and a major loss for the rebels and the rebel movement as a whole, really, in Eastern Ghouta, because this was the last major enclave of resistance, really. I mean, there are a few other pockets around, but in terms of in-siege population and in-siege fighters, this was really the big bastion of rebel resistance. What we've got here is a map. We're showing you there that it's just near Damascus, really close, on the suburbs of Damascus. And this is one of the reasons why Bashar al-Assad will be so pleased if he's managed to get all the rebel groups out of there, because it has been a rebel bastion just near his capital. And if he can drive all the rebels out and retake control of that territory, that creates not only security near the capital, but breathing space for him, and symbolically a big victory for him. People are saying this would be the biggest blow for the Syrian rebel movement since they lost control of eastern Aleppo in 2016 to the Assad regime.
Now, of course, the offensive on Eastern Ghouta, you know, as you were saying there, 6 weeks of almost daily bombings, really backed up largely by Russia. But, you know, is Assad at this stage really in an unassailable position in Syria?
Well, he would be very much reinforced by taking back Eastern Ghouta. As I was saying, there are very few pockets of rebel resistance left in Syria. You've got up near the Turkey border in the Idlib and Aleppo provinces where these rebels are being sent. You've got this map there. The two towns where the rebels are reportedly being evacuated to in this deal, Al-Bab and Jarablus. So that would be a pocket up there of resistance near the Turkey border. Also in the northern suburb of Homs and down near Al-Daraa in the south of Syria. But basically, yeah, he's in a stronger position than he has been since the beginning of the war in Syria, but backed up by Russians who have negotiated this deal, who've brokered it, who've stalled at the UN Security Council, provided air power, and have been overseeing these evacuations. So Assad looks in an unassailable position, but without his allies' questions about where he would be today.
And of course, we've seen the allies change throughout that 7-year war, so we'll have to keep a close eye on that. For now, Catherine, thanks indeed. Catherine Norris Trent there, trying to take us through the situation in Syria.